Informative and unpredictable, testing the limits like only we can. From Span Enterprises in Rock Hill, South Carolina, it's the Bandit Room. All right, welcome again to a new episode of the Bandit Room. We have a very special guest with us today. I'm Charles, this is Stefanie, and our special guest is Mr. Tommy Pope. Now, Tommy Pope has done a lot of things. He's made a big name for himself as an attorney. Most people may know him as an attorney. He was the solicitor for the South Carolina 16th Circuit from 1993 to 2006. He's the managing partner of the L. Rod Pope Law Firm in Rock Hill, South Carolina. And in his part-time, he's the Speaker Pro Tem at the South Carolina House of Representatives. So thank you.
Still trying to figure out what I'm going to do when I grow up.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Please share a little bit about what you've been up to lately in the House.
Again, the legislature, we have 2-year sessions. We're in the second year of a 2-year session, and we run now. We actually voted last year to shorten the session, and so we run till about mid-May. Okay. Of course, each year we take up the budget. It begins in the House, it'll go to the Senate, then it'll come back over. So we deal with that each year. Really, what's been pressing down this year has been kind of the whole nuclear issue, with down in Fairfield County and the SCANA and Santee Cooper kind of bailing out on that construction and all the ramifications it's had for taxpayers, for ratepayers. We've really spent a lot of time dealing with that.
Yeah, wow. It's interesting how much I think the sort of almost local news or South Carolina news gets dwarfed by the stuff in the national attention these days. So I feel like a lot of people are kind of in the dark as to what the House is even up to.
Well, it's funny that different representatives kind of do their notification of their constituents different ways. I actually do something similar to this, but a little more on the fly. Every week from the State House, I'll shoot a little video. I've noticed that about half the time this year, it seems like I'm saying the same 3 things. We're talking about because I actually during the off session, the Speaker put together a bipartisan committee to kind of look at this ratepayer issue. It was funny. It was the House Utility Ratepayers Committee. So the acronym ended up being like HERP-C. It sounded like a bad disease,
Say that 3 times fast.
So we decided we weren't going to do that anymore. But I volunteered to be on it because, like for example, I live up toward York and Clover, and we actually have York Co-op. So York Co-op buys their energy from Central, who buys their energy from Santee Cooper. So even though sometimes they seem like Columbia issues, they're very important to the folks that live up here too.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. All right, and now another one you've been talking about a little bit recently has been the recent solar bill that didn't pass. It sort of got.
It did and then it didn't.
It had more than half. It had majority approval, but it didn't have the 2/3 that was necessary.
There's as you've kind of garnered from reading the articles I've seen, there's a heck of a lot of inside baseball at play both ways. Right. For me personally, what I wanted to see happen is I want solar to have the opportunity to expand. But if I choose solar and you're my neighbor and you don't choose solar, I just want to make sure it's done in such a way that you're not having to foot the bill. I rely a lot on our folks up at York Co-op, just again because that is my electric company, and here in the community, advice-wise, one of the real problems with kind of electricity billing in general is your fixed cost. Just like you have the fixed cost here at business, you have the same fixed cost, and the lights may cost you the same regardless whether you got 20 people downstairs or 40 people downstairs. Well, it's kind of the same thing with billing. And so if I have solar, when it gets nighttime, I'm still going to want electricity, so I'm going to stay hooked to the co-op. Yeah. So the truth is I may be using half as much, but I'm still hooked up the same. It's costing them the same to be ready to deliver. So as usual, that part of it really needs some people to get around the table and sort it out. Again, what kind of happened was more a game of politics, and that a bill has to pass in 3 readings. Okay, on the second reading is normally the time when it's really on the floor and we really have the debate. The second reading, the bill actually passed, and I voted for the solar bill. There was a motion on the third reading, which normally is kind of perfunctory. It just happens. The motion on the third reading that said well, you really need 2/3 on this one because there's a requirement in the Constitution that if it's going to be a taxation component, and it had a very small taxation component that basically was protecting the county from going back and assessing and saying, well, your house is worth more now because you got solar panels. Well, anyway, long story, the maneuvering, and you've read in the paper whether you're saying it's big electricity that's doing it versus the little guys. So hopefully what we can do is go back to the table. There's a lot of hard feelings going on down there now. We're at the end of a 2-year session. So as a practical matter, anything, even if you had a bill almost to the finish line, it has to start completely over. Right. So whatever crew comes back next year, they'll start it over again.
Okay. Now what that was trying to do though, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was trying to lift the 2% cap on, so South Carolina has a cap of 2%.
Yeah, and of course we could take your viewers into the weeds, because it gets to net metering, and the 2% cap was to saying net metering, of course, is if I generate more solar than I'm using, requiring the company, the electric company, to buy it back, which sounds good in one sense, but the flip side is they were saying that you had to buy it back at retail, which I always use my friend Gary Simmel's example. He's a car dealer. I'd love to have a bill that made Gary buy back my used car at retail value, even though he couldn't sell it for such.
Exactly. All right. Well, we don't need to get too deep into
that. Yeah, absolutely. We'll be talking about this.
We'll go back to that.
Year.
Talk to us a little bit about Santee Cooper and the project down there. I know some of that impacted red drum fishing, and there were so many different components, but it was really a great thing. And given that the Catawba River here feeds into that, I mean, it's more of an impact than I think some local people consider.
And I think it's the same issue. Everything is intertwined. So a lot of the fishery issues and the recreational issues that belong as part and parcel to Santee Cooper, as these companies, it kind of spills over with both the nuclear, not as much the solar, but on the nuclear issue. A lot of the companies that were coming interested in buying Santee Cooper, really the recreational component, i.e. what Santee Cooper river system, was kind of a throwaway for them, And so, I've heard different pitches, and again, this all is at play in that whole nuclear issue, different pitches. Some companies are maybe even willing to buy Santee Cooper from an electric generation standpoint, but turn those properties over to like Parks, Recreation, and Tourism. So there's a lot, and when you mentioned that, it reminded me, we actually passed a bill in the House this time, of course, got to pass the Senate too, but would look at the valuation of Santee Cooper and try to look at, because you've heard the governor say sell it, or you've heard people from Berkeley County say don't sell it.
Right.
To do, just like you do in any business, you do your due diligence, and that would include those kind of resources too. So, I used to tease them. I guess I blame it on prosecution, but I said my hair used to be brown when this started. There's a lot to wrestle over,
Right.
True.
That's true. Now there was an article that I admired in the State recently about how there was certain things that Congress could learn from the way the South Carolina House operates.
Right. Right.
There were a few things like they may fight, and there's a majority, definitely majority control over the Republicans, but at the same time, most things that they pass almost unanimously.
Right.
And in an age where everything is so partisan, it almost feels just negative, just the way that the parties deal with each other.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about?
Well, I think it's not pure. The truth is politics is really about people and about relationships. And I think it feels to me, obviously having not been in Washington, but observing, it feels to me we have more opportunities in Columbia, maybe because we're smaller, maybe we're not in as big a pressure cooker, to build relationships and to again, kind of see both sides. The tough thing you kind of touched on, I've noticed it, I've been a Republican, since I was old enough to vote, and my dad, who was the Democratic sheriff, did not disown me, so it worked out, But, it's hard. Being a Republican, for example, is harder and harder because you say everything's so contentious, and, as a prosecutor, my job was to seek the truth, kind of see both sides. Right. Well, so compromise doesn't mean I compromise my values, but you represent a constituency, and you represent, and you come from Charleston, and you come from, Oconee County or whatever. finding commonality is what good governance is really supposed to be. Sadly, that doesn't sizzle and sell as much as us choking each other.
At the base.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. All right, now tell a little bit about some of your goals. What are some things that you really want to see achieved in South Carolina?
Legislatively, I think the one I've seen that will probably be the toughest. I thought the legislature did a tremendous job last year tackling the infrastructure issues, and even against the, I still get the negative emails, or the Facebook contacts about, you greatest tax increase ever. I always laugh. I said, the good thing is I learned there's this new button on Facebook I wasn't aware of called unfriend. So rather than let you, at some point after I've tried to be cool and explain and you're wearing me out, just unfriend. But for me, I've worked on, and it may attribute to the gray hair too, but I've worked on tax reform from the time basically that I got there in 2010, 2011. I just see a lot of opportunities to if we would have the courage to do it, and it would take courage, much like the infrastructure, to interject fundamental fairness. We have so many exemptions, whether it's sales tax or the way we've structured our property tax. We were in a discussion earlier talking about small businesses, and the property tax on small businesses may mean the difference in the number of employees that you could have downstairs. If we would lighten up on that, the revenue, it's the old build it and they will come, the revenue could actually increase. And so there's a lot of variation on tax reform. I see, like our sales tax, we have, some 200 random exemptions. I will share with you, when I first got down, I'm a former police officer, and I had some reserve police officers talking to me at a ball game one time, and they were telling me they volunteered, they didn't get paid, and they spent about $3,000 on their own equipment. And they were saying, is there some kind of help we could get? And so I got to Columbia looking and worked, and I got a tax break, basically a credit for that equipment.
Wonderful.
Well, when I'm on the floor and they're debating it, and somebody stands up and says, Pope, I thought you're the guy that said we shouldn't have all these breaks. And I said, absolutely. And as soon as you get ready to get rid of all these breaks, you can get rid of these police officers' breaks too. But until then,
But while they're here.
Yeah, but we just keep piling one on the other. So that's might be a shortened version of my I have a dream speech. One day we'd have tax reform, but we'll see.
Still pining for
Yes,
it.
sir.
That's what'll keep you there for now.
Till my wife tells me, or the voters tell me otherwise.
Yeah. We saw that you had a lot of interest in just infrastructure in general.
Right.
Can you talk about that for the state and like your dreams of where you see that going and what that would mean to local economy and just state economy in general?
I think, and I kind of said this, and of course Gary Simrell, who's a representative up here, really took lead on that bill last year. But, I've said York County, for all our shortcomings, the penny for progress that we've had for years now was the wisest thing we ever did, because if we had sat around, however many years we've had it now, and waited on Washington to come help us or Columbia to come help us, we'd still be waiting. Now, the flip side is when you're in the debate in Columbia, they say, well, York County's got good roads. And I'm going, yeah, don't punish us for making the choice to do something about it. But again, for me, there's politics. I always remember in Gladiator, at the beginning of Gladiator, and the emperor says, I want you to be the emperor. And he's going, I don't want to be emperor. And he says, I know, that's why I want you to do it. You'll give it back to the people. If we could get the folks in power that were willing to be fundamentally fair, because, does York County have different needs than Barnwell? Absolutely. But just because Barnwell doesn't have a lot of representation, you ought to feed them out of the same spoon, fairness-wise.
Right.
And so that's hopeful. And then we've all got to acknowledge that the port is vital to South Carolina. Yes. And if they can't get the trucks in and out, they'll go to Savannah, or the deepening of the port. We put money aside for that. So that's very important. I wish we would do more kind of forward-thinking things here in York County. I think that the city's done a lot, with like sports tourism and things of that nature. I have a new appreciation for that after having a 14-year-old that's doing travel volleyball. When I started doing the math in that tournament in Atlanta, how many teams, how many girls, how many hotel rooms, but there's some agritourism things, because I live on the western side that I see that would kind of be low-hanging fruit, but you got to have the courage to do it. When they were building soccer fields out there that used to be the
the plant.
The plant treatment plant. You know, I mean, that was some vision.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
That's true. Fantastic. Well, we did have another a congressman from South Carolina that recently said that he's going to be stepping down. I know you're familiar with Trey Gowdy.
Sure.
I believe he endorsed you in the last
He
race.
did.
And you go back a little bit, don't you?
Yes, sir. We were. I used to tease Trey. So I got elected in the '90s, and I was 30 years old. And about 10 years later, you know, Trey comes along, and I used to tease him. He was Tommy Pope 2.0. You know, he's the new young latest thing. And you know, and when he got to Washington, I was very proud of what he did and how he handled himself. And you know, as I ran for Congress last year, probably one of the things, you know, you rationalize it out, because my wife will tell you the popes have no business going to Washington, and apparently at least 200 voters agreed with her. You know.
It was a very thin margin
Yeah,
in
but
your
anyway,
defense.
so you know, but I was thinking with Trey, you know, that was an opportunity, but I saw how, you know, again joking about my gray hair, how it aged him, and I think really the two things, being away from his family, and, you know, because you know the kids grow up so quick, and then the frustration of not truly being able to accomplish anything. And I don't think I'm speaking out of school, you know, when I say, you know, that's, and knowing him as, you know, we're kind of the kind of, let me do something. If we're really not going to do anything, and we're just going to, you know, be legislators but not accomplish, then I can go build a barn at the house or something. You know.
I think I heard an interview with him recently where he talked about the sort of constant legislation with no actual, I don't know,
No
you said he's more cut out to executive leadership rather than.
I think that's true.
legislative.
Again, because and you see it to some measure in Columbia. You know, it's like you're posing, you know, you're seeming rather than being. Let's be something. Let's do something. And I guess that's the nature of politics.
Interesting.
That's fair.
All right. Well, what's the future going to hold for you, Tommy? The governor's out. No, not seeking that anymore.
Hey, the congressional race broke my will to live in that regard. That calling and begging for money thing. Yeah, Tommy'd rather work for his, I think. You know. And so I'm fortunate. I'm still here. I laugh. You know, even in Columbia now, we got, you know, a session about half a year. We're there about 3 days a week. I joke every time I come back up Black Street Thursday afternoon over at Elrod Pope, I look and see if the Pope is still on the sign. They hadn't pulled my name. You know, I'm very fortunate to have supportive partners. So I think I'll stay there. I think there's some work to be done. I'm humbled, you know, and being Speaker Pro Tem, I was elected, you know, by my peers, and you know, and that's, I do best when I've got somebody that kind of needs me, and you know, I think that's what works for me at the law firm. And you know, I need a kind of a wrong to right, and apparently they keep coming up with new wrongs for us to work on. So I think I'll do that. You know, again, my youngest daughter's 14 and home, and they've gotten used to me not being home. I think that's why my marriage is probably going so great. You know, so I think, you know, if the voters, you know, they'll have another chance to decide if they want me again this fall at the polls, and if they'll have me, I'll keep working for them.
Fantastic.
That's wonderful.
Fantastic. Any final thoughts?
I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I always tell them, if you need me, Tommy at TommyPope.com. You can find me anytime.
All right. Well, thank you very much for
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us as well. Stick around next week and see what we talk about on the day.